Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So there was the information published today that Russia is planning their attack on some of the NATO countries, and in this video we're going to review the possibility of that outcome. So we're speaking about Sweden, Finland and Estonia, which is located across the Baltic Sea. There are many of the articles published information about it that after the end of the war in Ukraine, Russia will concentrate their military efforts to occupy part of the territories abroad, including NATO countries. Well, not fully those countries, but part of those, and we have the article about it from the Finnish media source, and they refer to the NATO officials. They say that Russia has been practicing already an attack on Finland and the other countries of the Baltic Sea. Sources say that Russia would aim for the borders of peace of Turku from 1743. Well, according to that, part of Sweden and Finland could be occupied by Russia. But honestly, guys, I don't think that this situation could be real. Russia cannot liberate its own Kursk Oblast. They are really scrolling in the east. Yes, they take the ground, but much slower compared to what it was in the beginning of their full-scale attack on Ukraine. And the Russian army absolutely needs years and years to restore its capability. Russia struggles with their army men. If there is the conflict between NATO and Russia, it will be a nuclear war, not the standard one, because NATO army is way more powerful than Russians. However, I agree that there are tons of the provocations from the Russian side in the Baltic Sea. The vessel you may see here is the Russian oil tanker Eagle S, which is suspected to take part in damaging the underwater cables that are connecting Finland and Estonia. And just 1 month ago, there were some of the internet cables damaged by the other vessel, so investigation is ongoing for it as well. But this time, this particular oil tanker Eagle S was stopped by the Finnish Coast Guards. They've just landed on a deck using the helicopter, and this vessel is now under arrest, so it's detained temporarily. According to the information coming from the open media sources, investigators found some of the surveillance equipment on board of the ship, so probably it was even a spy vessel, which also could damage cables underwater. The investigation still is ongoing. So here we have the article: Russia-linked cable-cutting tanker seized by Finland was loaded with spy equipment, and also they found the identified person on board who hadn't got any sort of the sailor's documents, so they think that he could be a Russian spy, because to operate with sophisticated surveillance equipment you should be trained for that. And before Politica published the article about Estonia's city of Narva, which is located at the border with Russia, and there also were some of the provocations from the Russian side. There was the story with the snatched border demarcation buoys, which was clearly a provocation done several months ago. And about a quarter of Estonia's populations are ethnic Russians. I wouldn't say that they are not Estonians, no, they hold Estonian passport, and most of them, I believe, love Estonia, but still Russia may try to provide their own narratives through minority of that part of the population, like protection of the Russian language and so on, the same stuff which they did in Donbass. The worry is Kremlin could play the same card, try to seize eastern Estonia with its large population of ethnic Russians, the source say. A failure to react to this military possible provocation might show that the Article 5 Common Defense provisions is meaningless. Well, it depends how crazy Putin really is, how much движуха he really wants to achieve. Maybe Ukraine for him is not enough, but we understand that physically, no matter what Putin wants, Russia cannot conquer those countries. It is simply not possible with the resources Russia uses in Ukraine. So if Russia wants to act against NATO countries, they should take their full army from Ukraine and attack NATO countries. Or the other story, they should freeze the war, sanctions should be lifted from Russia, so the Russian economy may again start to produce lots of the military equipment, and that is how in a few years Russia may try this big-scale provocation, but not tomorrow, not the next year, but obviously NATO countries should be prepared for that. So my prediction that Russia will continue their provocations in Gulf of Finland, in Baltic Sea itself, against Estonia in Narva, and probably against Lithuania and Poland via Suwalki corridor. Those are two vulnerable places if we speak about the confrontation between NATO and Russia. But again, we shouldn't expect the military escalation very soon, because Russia physically, again, cannot do it. But again, it's the vet Putin's dream to show that NATO is not capable to defend its allies. But whether Putin would try to risk with everything he has, including his own life, I don't think so. You see, then even Putin attacked Ukraine in 2022, he was sure that he can change the Ukrainian government and occupy Ukrainian territory in a matter of few days or maximum weeks. He really thought that there would be no resistance from Ukrainians, so he actually went to Ukraine with just a limited amount of the forces compared to what Russia uses nowadays, for example. But because just the Ukrainian government wasn't prepared for this scenario, Russia managed to occupy especially the southern part of Ukraine. They tried to go to Kiev but were repelled by Ukrainian warriors. And later on, Russia lost Chernihiv, Sumy and Kharkiv regions mainly, and also they retreated from Kherson. But still they continued their special military operation in Donbass, taking more of the ground. Russia deployed even the part of the musicians' orchestra to celebrate their victory in Kiev. That's how crazy they were. And with NATO, I don't think that Putin really thinks that he will be greeted there. He already learned his big mistake in Ukraine, and if Russia wasn't able to conquer unprepared, really, Ukrainian army, how would they think to conquer NATO? My friends, if you want to support the job that I do on YouTube, you might also join me on Patreon. I'll put the link for my page right in the video description below. Thank you so much for supporting my motivation. Right guys, and now let's go to the military map updates, because there are some of the changes, especially in the eastern front lines. We have the update from Kurahovo town itself, where Russia got more of the quarters of this town under control. Well, according to my information, this part also was taken by Russians. Moreover, Russia sent a small sabotage group, and they were spotted in this place not far away from the industrial part. So this is the building, and there was the Russian soldiers spotted. So here we go with this picture. It is already the territory of the power plant. And this map published by Russians, so they say that they've occupied Kurahovo and went to this place. Yes, they were spotted, but for this hour we may say that it's just a gray zone. We are not sure that Russians were definitely capable to take the entire buildings under their control. Yes, the small group was spotted, but it could be still a gray area. So before, this industrial territory was used by Ukrainian forces to hide the forces mostly underground, because there are many of the basements, but now it seems like Ukraine already withdrew the forces from the territory, mainly. And also, if we go westbound from Kurahovo, Russia increased their attacks not far away from Shevchenko, so it was yesterday, it is today. Well, Russians would like to go southbound from this place, trying to encircle this entire region, but here there is the war obstacle which holds Russians from the fast assault. By the way, on the south the situation is mostly similar. The river holds for now the Russian army. Nevertheless, they tried to cross it, so it was yesterday. Today there was the front line change, but still they haven't crossed the river. I wonder if this bridge is still out there. In the Pakros direction itself, Russia moved just a little today, occupying one of the three lines. Well, the battle for Pakrovsk itself will occur in the very beginning of 2025. And also for the last 24 hours, Russia occupied part of the Torets, the central district. So yes, as you see, Ukraine still struggles defending its territory because, you know, first of all, the proper defense lines were not built on time. And the second reason that the Ukrainian army still needs reforms. I've told you a lot about that stuff on my videos. As for the possible new Ukrainian offensive operation, well, Russians are screaming about it in their propaganda media, in their military channels, that Ukraine is getting ready for something. They say that it could be the entrance of the Ukrainian army towards Bryansk region, Kursk region, again from the different place. They're also speaking about Zaporizhia direction, but there are lots of the Russian defense lines. And they also say about Transnistria, which now will struggle without the gas supplements from Russia. Because Russia already said that they will stop the transit of their gas to Moldova from the new year. The government of Moldova already told that Russia uses their gas as their weaponry. Yeah, it was from the very beginning, like for decades. And there is now the big confrontation between Slovak Prime Minister and Zelensky. Both use harsh rhetorics against each other, especially after Fico visited Moscow. Some of the Slovak officials even called to open some investigation against Fico for his connections with Putin. Well, Fico is concerned about the gas transit to his country from Russia, and Ukraine already told that it will close its pipeline for Russia since New Year. But in this case, Fico told that he might cut the energy supplies to Ukraine. Well, the electrical energy from Slovakia is not a charity program. No, Ukraine pays for it a lot of funds. Fico just tries to present that they help Ukraine. So definitely Putin and Fico may play their common game against Ukraine. The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, by the way, is also in this scheme. Their first idea is to blame Ukraine for not negotiating with Russia and to show Donald Trump that Russia is ready to negotiate, but Ukraine and Zelensky no. And their second goal is basically to provide the policy of terror towards Ukrainians, yes, ordinary Ukrainians. By the time Russia hits the Ukrainian energy infrastructure, Ukraine would not have enough backup in its energy sector, even if it pays Slovakia to get some of the electricity to at least partially cover the needs. Luckily for us, there are not many other politicians in Europe for now who would like to play also in this scam scheme. But here clearly we see the efforts from Putin and also probably from the Chinese Communist Party to push Ukraine. They work together not just against Ukraine but against the interests of the United States of America and European Union. Just a couple of years ago, Slovakia sent fighter jets to Ukraine, and now they have Fico, who play an open dirty game against Ukraine together with his fellow Orban. But they're just small players in this big geopolitical game, and Russia plus China may sacrifice them at any moment. Nevertheless, I expect that the pressure on Ukraine will increase in the coming days and months. So our government should be ready for that scenario. Okay, minus Russian propaganda man in Donbass. Ukraine hit the Russian command headquarters in the east, and the Russian press was there by the time. The guy name was Maxim Yeliseyev, and he attended front lines lots of the times, saying how Russians are fighting against Nazis. And the big storage of the Russian-produced Geran drones was hit in Orlovskaya Oblast. You might call those drones Gerans or Shahed drones. Still, Russia receives the spare parts from Iran. Not all of them, but they continue to receive. So Ukrainian intelligence in this case used its own drones to hit the drone infrastructure. Great news from Greece, they will send to Ukraine Air-IM-7 Sparrow anti-aircraft missiles, which also could be used against drones. Ukraine will obtain just 24 of those missiles. Well, not a lot, but nevertheless it's better than nothing. And also Ukraine continued to use F-16s for the air defense missions inside Ukrainian territory. For now, they are rarely used on the front lines, or maybe not used at all, because Ukraine has just few of those airplane types to operate widely on the front lines. You need basically 100 of those units, at least 100 to have some of the superiority against the Russian aviation. Because after all, it's understandable that, for example, Sukhoi 35 is way better and advanced compared to F-16, kind of the old school fighter jet. Yeah, I would like for Ukraine to have F-35s to conquer the threat from the Russian aviation, hopefully someday. And about this one, it's the attack airplane, it's not the fighter jet, it is used for a completely different purpose. Well, my viewers, I think, already understand that. And by the way, guys, China is testing their so-called Generation 6 of the fighter jet, but it's not a fighter jet, and probably on my other channel I'm gonna explain you what is that and show you the available videos, pictures and everything. About the airplane that was shot down over Russia, well, today Putin called to Azerbaijani President Aliyev and Putin apologized. But not for downing the Azerbaijani airplane, no, but because over Russia something happened with the airplane. So Russia still doesn't take responsibility for this really terrifying aviation accident which they caused. This video was filmed in Syria, really not far away from Khmeimim air base of the Russian army. You may see that they still fly their airplanes, but they're not bombing anyone any longer. What happens next? Well, I give it like 90% that Russia will finally withdraw their bases. They already removed the air defense. There were numerous reports about this stuff dated like 10 days ago that Russia definitely has begun the massive withdrawal. So they packed all of their belongings. We also have the confirmation from the satellite images about it. So the Russian Air Force used Ilyushin-76 and Antonov-124 airplanes to evacuate all of the equipment possible. Yeah, Russia officially says that they are trying to agree the presence of 2 of the Russian bases in Syria with the new Syrian government which controls this area, but it seems like they will not be able to negotiate, and if they decide to stay, well, those guys, as I showed you before, are very close to their base and they have the air defense. An interesting article from the Washington Post saying that Biden still thinks that it was better for him to run the campaign against Donald Trump. So now he regrets his own decision to drop out from the race. He understands his general frustration, but he would have lost too, I think. Joe Biden is just out of the physical and the mind condition to continue his duties. I think like that, and I think most of the Americans also agree with that. And basically from the Democratic Party there was no candidate who would be like so famous and so known as Donald Trump to compete against Donald Trump. That's why we have what we have, and it will be very interesting the next year to check out what Donald Trump might do with his new policy, because he has lots of the promises. Some of them are quite strange, but anyways, we're gonna not just see it but experience.